Hi everyone, welcome to Naturopathic Performance. I'm Gordon Kogan. Tune in here and on Instagram at naturopathic.performance for additional content on all things naturopathic medicine and high performance lifestyle. We discuss hot topics and consult with authorities on all manner of subjects in a way to give you high yield take home information to enhance your high performance life. Episode 4 Eudaimonic Well-Being in Advanced Professional and Academic Life Inflection Points with co-host and guest Michael Ryan. Well, that was a mouthful, and let's get to it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here at the Naturopathic Performance Podcast. I am very fortunate to have a good friend and colleague here on with me today, Michael Ryan, from days of work in Equinox past. And I'm excited to talk today. The title of today's podcast is basically Eudaimonic Well-Being in Advanced Professional and Academic Life Inflection Points. And so we're going to get into Michael's history a little bit, his bio. He's a fitness professional serving the industry for over 30 years, a graduate of SUNY Queens College with a BA in health management. And after 22 years, went back to earn his master's in kinesiology in dual concentration in corrective exercise and sports psychology from A.T. Still University. He's currently now, as well, a PhD doctoral learner and candidate who's just recently and in the process of submitting and soon to be defending his dissertation. So congratulations on that upcoming adventure for you, Michael. And I'm just excited today. We're going to talk a little bit about his work, his studies, and some other things that connect with, hopefully connect with some of you out there, and certainly with me, having been pursued a big career change in academia and professional studies later in life, and how some of his studies might link to that as well. So, Michael, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Gordy. I'm excited to discuss our paths together today, and it's good to see you again.
Fantastic, awesome. So let's give everyone just a little bit of a history on what is your current study in or dissertation. What is your dissertation about?
So my dissertation, to summarize, is how personal training clients describe developing eudaimonic well-being and meaning making in live virtual coaching relationships in the virtual arena. It just kind of became evident to me that when we were forced to transition, fitness world anyway, forced to transition into a virtual environment, and I looked around and I had colleagues who were challenged to sustain business, if not create business in that environment. While I was appreciating it, it illuminated new opportunities, and I found not only myself, my clients continued to thrive. So it piqued my interest, my curiosity as to why some flourished in that environment and others did not. So I just wanted to understand that more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found it very interesting and kind of introducing me to this concept of eudaimonic well-being or eudaimonia. And so I looked into this a bit, and just to define it, would you be able to just run through a definition of what that means, and for the listeners as well as just to give me a sense of what that definition is for you?
Sure. So through a theoretical model, but obviously we can define it. But if we really look to its origins, it goes back to the scholarly writings of Aristotle. And for many years, it was interpreted that what he was describing was happiness. But over the years, researchers like Dr. Carol Reif, Ryan and DC, and most recently, Bauer and Huda, Waterman as well back there, they kind of evolved it into, if you take the prefix and the suffix of the word, it really comes down to EU, meaning like being well, well as trending towards, and then Damon almost being like angelican, or a guiding light towards flourishing and the virtuous self, and fulfilling a life well lived. So from motivational and orientations, we can look at hedonia, which is going to be something that's a little more pleasurable, maybe extrinsically driving, such as like monetarily earning or achieving something, an award, if you will, where eudaimonia is more about enduring challenge, trusting processes, oftentimes going through struggle, and finding a level of resilience, and thereby joy, gratitude, and all these things that kind of lead to like a purpose in life. You know, at the end of one's life, when, at least my interpretation is, when we're on our taking our last breath, we are looking for the things, and we're going to ask for some of the things to share those final moments with, and those things being what are most meaningful to us: relationships, children. Nobody can take their checkbook with them, or, you know, short-term achievements. It's what have we built, and what can we take with us in our dreams, and what has shaped us into meaning.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, so I did a quick dive, and so just to summarize, from the Greek, eudaimonia or eudaimonic well-being means the highest human good, pulled from good old Google.
Yeah.
But I think you summarized it in a way there that's definitely makes a lot of sense and is very digestible. So I appreciate that.
And it's still a morphing definition over time, like, because so much goes into it. And this is why I think that the nature of my study, the specificity of that study, has not been really looked into through the virtual lens for personal well-being and health coaching. It has through other mechanisms, but for this, and that's the unique thing about a PhD that I didn't realize going in, but I've recognized it through the process, that we go in with a general idea to understand something, and going through the research and reading about that particular topic, it creates curiosity about what is still not known about that topic. And then we can kind of listen to what the literature is suggesting and try to fill that gap. And that's how I arrived here.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that your work has a lot of crossover, certainly with any type of coaching relationship, whether it be in the fitness world, or, you know, like myself, entering and transitioning into more of a, you know, medically kind of oriented coaching and consulting position with patients and things like that in naturopathic medicine. We talk a lot about the, you know, therapeutic relationship, and developing those things to be to stand through time, and to create a really deep, you know, I guess, you know, client base that is successful and productive, and works for your patients and for your clients. And so that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about this, because I think that, you know, anyone who's in any sort of a therapeutic coaching relationship can benefit from, you know, understanding maybe at least just this perspective on, you know, how kind of this philosophical and theoretical, you know, approach and theory, kind of working towards that, or having it be a foundation of your work, can enhance both the experience for yourself as well as your patients and clients, but also overall, you know, for your business in general. And I think that's one of the things that resonated, you know, with me when I learned what you had studied specifically for your dissertation, but also how it can apply to others in other roles. So that's really what kind of sparked it for me. And you offline, you had said you told me a story about quite some years ago, about a car accident you had, and you years later had a subsequent conversation that led, almost like drove you into the study of flow and eudaimonia and positive well-being and psychology and the Japanese concept of ikigai. So maybe you can give us a little story about that.
Sure. So it was in the fall of 1995, October of 1995. I was in transit. At the time I was living in Queens, driving up to Westchester County to see a client in home. And I was getting very tired. I was on the Hutchinson River Parkway. And if you're familiar with it, any of the listeners, it's a winding, snaky road. It had just started to rain, so the asphalt was very slick, and I was falling asleep at the wheel. I was young at the time. I was driving my dad's brand new 1995 Mercury Cougar, which was rear-wheel drive. And I had closed my eyes for what seemed to be only a second, but I'm sure it was probably a bit longer. And when I opened them, I was on the bend of the parkway, and I panicked, abruptly hit the brakes. They seized, and I kind of fishtailed and went rear end backwards down a hill, and the car rolled about 3 times. And I wasn't seriously hurt. I got about 70 stitches at the top of my head. Put a lot of fear in me. It was months before I ever drove in the rain again. But I never forgot that day. And then fast forward now to 2014, when I was in a curriculum development for a role promotion. And we were going through risk stratification discussion. And we were role playing based on a questionnaire that we had filled out. And I was telling this story. And the proctor at the time interrupted. He was a retired physician. And he said, I know I'm supposed to be a fly on the wall for this discussion, but I need to ask you. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, you fell asleep at the wheel. You were not inebriated, and after a full night's sleep. Yet when you got to the hospital, not one doctor asked why. I said he didn't. Or they didn't. And at the time, my son was like 6. And he said, Mike, don't you drive your child every day? And those words went through me like a harpoon at that moment. And I thought to myself, today, I'm going to call my primary care physician and ask for a sleep study recommendation or referral. And sure enough, it came back that I had severe sleep apnea. So I now use a CPAP machine, which, has been diagnosed, and it's amazing how you feel and recognize what it is to have a full night's sleep. And biomarkers of health have actually, for years, I had borderline hypertension, even being medicated, and I couldn't figure out why. Well, if you're going to sleep in a stressful environment where you're not really sleeping, right, and you're causing an inflammatory response, recovery is going to be interrupted, and hence you're going to have a fallout of other biomarkers that are unfavorable. So taking all this in, this is now in 2014, I started to recognize, like, what is that one experience changed my life. And I can say it was an optimal experience, right? Because it was in great part detrimental to my health at that point, but it was an awakening, no pun intended. So I came across the literature about a peak experience. And the more I was understanding about what a peak experience is in comparison to an optimal experience, both of them resonate very high emotionally in our brains, and retention is enormous with these things. And they are life-changing in many ways, shifting, if you will. And the more I read about it, it led me into flow and the discussions of flow and how in optimal experiences and performances, flow has these characteristics of clarity and certainty, where your challenges are equal to or just slightly higher than your skill set. So the level of engagement is deep. There is this like harmonious attention in the moment of what you're doing, and time transcends, like you lose concept of it. Like it seems when you're in it, it takes forever. And then you look at the clock and it's only 15 minutes. And it's just like, wow, how did that happen? How did I get here? And the more often that that has in that engaging activity, the more you kind of, the paradox is that you reconcile what I felt in that experience and you want to revisit that same activity, and you start to develop flow. And a lot of the neuroscience on it is that flow is about this immense concentration so that other parts of the brain are suffering. And on the contrary, the other parts of the brain, unique individuals who are in such a deep flow, are able to relax those other things so that you can remain focused so much. And then dopamine comes into it, and that's like this unbelievable feeling. And a lot of the research for eudaimonia, I'm sorry, for flow, kept mentioning eudaimonia. Specifically, Csikszentmihalyi was the first time, who was the godfather of flow. And the literature that we have on it, sadly, he passed away this past December. But he often used eudaimonia in the research, and it was my first exposure to this. This was long before I was a doctoral student, and I was just enamored. I found myself in flow, pursuing flow, and the feeling of this long-term fulfillment of what I was discovering about my own self, and how can I put this into a scientific, into research that would help others, specifically in the field of strength conditioning and wellness coaching, find a higher level of flow or self-determination in ourselves, thereby to be a better leader or pathfinder for our clients. Because the research will suggest the more self-determined the practitioner is, or the trainer or coach is, the more likely our followers or our clients and patients will have that same level of self-determined practice, because they are so trusting in us. And it just keeps evolving. And then I was having this conversation with a client who is very cerebral and very passionate about his family. And he sent me a book during COVID and introduced me to Ikigai. And Ikigai is what, in Japanese culture is probably very much related to flow, if not eudaimonia. And it kind of translates into a life well lived. And with that, there is this, it comes from positive psychology as well, which Dr. Sullivan would talk about. The pillars of positive psychology are positive emotions, levels of engagement, relationships, meaning in those relationships, and then levels of accomplishment. So it was kind of presented to me that if, sushi is not a cheap meal by any means, right? It's, let me say this, it's an investment of your time and money, especially a good restaurant. But if you ever sat at the bar and you recognize the presentation, not only of what's on the plate, but the art of being a sous chef, is very much Ikigai. So you may have just 2 or 3 pieces of eloquently decorated fish that is so flavorful once you put it into your mouth. But at the same time, that chef is saying, this is me. This is all I've learned. This is my life's presentation, and I'm a gift to you. So in very, like, that transition of me to you, I always, my perception is it's coaching. It's the deliverable of what we do as practitioners. And when it comes to health and practice like you're in, is just, this is what gives meaning to clients. And, my research is looking into, is this a factor that thwarts attrition rates? Mm-hmm. So that was a quick, short synopsis of what you had asked.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's, and Yeah, as I transition from hearing you describe that, I mean, I think that, myself and, anyone listening, whether you're a client or a coach or both, of any type, and I think that's important to realize is I think that we all deserve and we all have and we all, I hate using the word should, don't I dislike using the word should, but we all should have those relationships, mentors, coaches, whatever you like to call it, but in the, kind of in the fitness, wellness, health world, um, there's often a lot of, I guess I could say, yeah, focus put on the dynamic of that relationship, because people are, depending on that me to you transition.
Hmm.
And certainly this could lead us into, you know the discussions on, maintaining that balance um, and drive and empathetic, um, what's the word I'm looking for, um,
Authentic leadership, right?
yeah, authentic leadership. Also, what we run into oftentimes is a little bit of that. There's a lot of burnout out there, right?
Oh, yes. Hmm.
So this can go down a whole nother path, but I think, the focus on the, um, the highest kind of value driven form of your life
Hmm.
as a coach, and having that, kind of guide your ability to help others at the same time, giving them that me to you, like you said, the kind of that me to you presentation. This is why we're here. This is what I know. I'm going to try to teach and educate and all of those things, to your patients or to your clients. So, what are some strategies that you use for yourself, particularly, or that you have studied that, can maybe that listeners, or people interested can look into to, um, try to incorporate that into their life and create a little bit of balance, and maybe avoid some of that, lack of empathy towards their clients or lack of drive to help them,
Hmm.
because we're just because you're just burned out, because there's just nothing left, and you can't quite muster up the energy for yourself, let alone to that empathetic relationship for your clients.
Well, I think first of all, we and I touched on the mechanism of authentic leadership, where um, we are transparent and to our followership, or whoever that may be in whatever domain, and that these individuals understand that having their best interest is our best interest as the practitioner. So there was another shift in my career. Um, I was looking at Twitter one day and I came across Coach Mike Boyle's feed, and he had advertised a book on there, or promoted a book, let me say, but called Aspire: Discover Your Purpose Through the Power of Words by Kevin Hall. And at the time, he said that he had suggested it to some of his staff, and then later on, as I understood the way he told the tale, made it required reading. It went from a Christmas gift to his staff to required reading for the staff. Now, the irony there is that I read it just out of curiosity. If I was told to read it, I may not have read it. So, to anyone listening, I am suggesting, highly encouraging you to aspire to read Aspire. And he talks about 12 words in there, which really added, beyond kinesiology and program design, these words are in my skill set and helped from a psychological perspective of meeting clients where they are, a client-centered approach, which is really nurturing the psychological needs of the individual, which, according to self-determination theory, are competence, relatedness, and autonomy. And using levels of motivational interviewing and understanding where a client is coming from, and gathering a perspective of their biopsychal and social implications of who this individual is, allows me to have a better conversation with them, understand them more, and be able to program for them in an effective way. And the words I was talking about, getting back to Hall's book, are the word coach, which, and Nick Winkelman talks about this too, that the word coach stems from a Hungarian town called Kocs, Kocs. And it was the first town to actually have a vehicle that took a person from significance from where they are to where they want to be. And as I tell the story when I facilitate this, I'll be showing my age a little bit, but I used to watch Little House on the Prairie when I was a little kid with my grandmother, and the reruns. And I remember Walnut Grove had this shack, which was the train station. So visitors would come to town, they would get off the train at the train station, and a horse and carriage was there to pick them up, a stagecoach to take them to their final destination. So when we look at coaching, it's basically to take a person from where they are to where they want to be safely, efficiently, effectively. Yes. Has it transcended into, elite sport? Absolutely. But at the very mechanism of it, it's keeping somebody safe and doing so efficiently and effectively. And, we could even take it down to, I just flew home from Toronto after seeing you up there, Gordon. I didn't fly business class. I flew coach, right? It got me where I wanted to be. Right. Another word in there that was is genshai, and it's from Indian descent, where we never underestimate the life of another, and we kind of always consider what their path has been. So, as Hall puts in the book, if a homeless person is asking you for money on the street, and I've done this as I worked in Manhattan, don't just drop the coin in their cup. Get down on a knee and diminish the status that separates the two of you, and see that person as a human, and eye to eye level, drop the coin or money into their cup, and just make it compatible. Like I understand you. I'm empathetic to whatever has happened to you. So these are the things that have helped me avoid burnout, that it's all not about crushing workouts, volumes of sessions. It's I'd rather have a smaller client base that I can nourish and invest myself in, because that keeps me more highly engaged. And the more engaged I'm going to be, I'm more likely to be that inspiration to a client.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree. I think that's a really good spot to kind of transition into just a little bit of a discussion on just some takeaways from your experience, as well, being someone who engaged in extensive change of course, life course studies, and professionally and academically, like at a later in life stage. Mm-hmm. And just some of the key takeaways that you might recommend for anyone out there considering it, but also that has already engaged in that and is preparing to drive towards that new path successfully, given some of the things that we've already talked about. And so do you have any thoughts on that? What can you share?
Well, I will say that in high school and undergraduate years, I was a get-by student. I'm not an easy learner. I would have to study things, and my concentration was not great unless it was something I was really interested in. So, general studies, just the arts, didn't pull me in. So, I treaded as a BEC student. And then when I waited 22 years to go back to graduate school when the time was right, and I had the opportunity. And there's just like this significant difference that when you are studying something that you are really curious and passionate about, learning is fun. And it doesn't feel like a chore. You actually want to be proactive with it. So I'm going to make a suggestion that if you have a desire to pursue a graduate degree, if you haven't done so already, or you're considering some level of a terminal degree, make sure that it's something that you've been curious about for some period of time. Don't make a haphazard decision. Be conscious that this is what you want to do, because you're going to live with this idea and this topic for several years, peeling back the onion to get deeper and deeper to understand it more. And if you're not passionate about it at the opening of the gate, read some books on the topic. I'm reading a great book right now as it relates to flow, by Stephen Coulter. It's called Impossible, his follow-up to The Rise of Superman. So, and he talks about, like, read 5 different levels of books, keep peeling back the layer. And if you are really intrigued about a particular subject or task or activity, pursue it then. And let the motivation, as we were talking about hedonia and eudaimonic influences, if it's just for the degree or just to say I achieved this, and I'm even going to put it out on a limb to say I need this to do a job, right? For a career path. At the beginning, that might be well enough, but as you progress through and you enter as Gordon Kogan or Michael Ryan, and then you transcend your identity through this process, and you exit as Dr. So-and-so, that's a whole thing that you have to digest in itself, because people speak to you different, you speak different, you look at things differently, you've learned to not react to things, and you respond accordingly. You become a critical thinker. And this is so important with all biomarkers of health, because I found, and through the research of Eudaimonia, the more that we appreciate the process and endure things, find resilience, HRV increases rather, blood pressure diminishes. We see inflammatory cytokines go down. So it improves, well-being is beyond the psychological component. It actually has a physical transcendence. So if you find this level of flow in academia, and if it should lead to a terminal degree, just ensure that it's going to bring value and to your life, where you are kind of fulfilling some of the virtues you've always dreamed of.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Right. So obviously it's a really, really big decision. It's a
Mm-hmm.
huge investment of our time and our money and
Mm-hmm.
all of those factors,
Self-sacrifice too, right?
considered. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Self-sacrifice for yourselves as well as families and
Mm-hmm.
all that. So I can definitely relate and appreciate many of those points that you made there. And yeah, it's just really, from a personal perspective, from my perspective, a very, like you said, you have to, when those journeys are quote unquote over, which they never are in academia and professional studies, and in career paths such as the ones that we've chosen, it's never really, the learning is never over. But like you said, there is an adaptation phase. Like, where am I? I've completed this huge task in my life, and now where do I go with it? What do I do? Do you have, like, are we directed right into something, or is there a lag time of time where you have to absorb that new, like you said, a little bit of a new identity, right? You've shifted yourself. And so we've gotten, we've kind of circled the wagon on, how some of the, like, internal, you know, kind of philosophical striving towards the highest human good, both in ourselves and for our patients and for our clients, as well as, and that wraps into, digesting change in yourselves and in your career, how when you do pursue those changes, or when they happen to you of no choice of your own. But I just wanted to kind of encapsulate that a little bit for our discussion, and for people out there that might be interested in or going through some of the same processes that we're really kind of right in the middle of, right? Like, I just wrote my licensing examination. You're going to defend your dissertation here coming up real soon, and it's like culmination, a huge culmination of all of this work and all this time and this investment. And how do we digest it and absorb it in a way that continues to resonate with our values and with that pursuit of continuing to help ourselves, while giving us the space and the energy and the empathetic, the vault of empathy that we can fill up for people, and keep it full as we drive out and really try to, obviously advance ourselves and advance our careers, but also do a lot of helping in the meantime as well. So
Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoyed our discussion today and would like to hear more, please subscribe and follow us on Instagram at naturopathic.performance. Leave a rating and a review or a message on any subjects you might like to hear in the future. Thanks so much. Until next time.